I just want to do one of these real quick. Looking at number 1, if it says simplify, it means I want to distribute and get it as simplified as possible. So what is negative 4y squared times 5y to the 4th? Negative 20y to the 6th, because you add the exponents. I hear a lot of talking, and I don't want to hear you guys talking. I want to hear you guys answering me or not hearing you. Okay, what's the negative 4y squared times the negative 3y squared? A positive 12y to the 4th. And then what's a negative 4y squared times a positive 2? A negative 8y squared. What we're going to learn how to do today is go backwards. So what we just did was we distributed, we multiplied it out, and in a minute I'm going to give you the problem like this, and we're going to factor it, and we'll get an answer that looks like this. So we're going to learn to go backwards today. So what we just did was simplifying, multiplying, distributing. In a minute, when we go backwards, when we factor, we'll end up with an answer that's going to have parentheses within the answer somewhere. So the very first rule of factoring is to look for the greatest common factor, which I will call the GCF. It's the very first thing that we're going to look for whenever we're factoring. So as I teach you other methods, this is the first thing you always want to check for. Off of the phone.
Just getting off. That's the first lesson.
Yeah, the first lesson is get off the phone when I'm trying to teach a lesson. Put it away.
I'm hungry.
Okay, so looking at this one here, I'm not going to do it how you see it here. I'm going to show you one way, and then if any of you need to see another way, I can show you a different way. First, I start with all of the leading numbers, and I ask myself, what's the biggest thing that could divide into a 4, divide into a 12, and divide into an 8 evenly? What's the biggest number that could divide into all three of those evenly?
2.
2 does.
Oh, biggest 4.
But we want the greatest common factor, so we want 4. 4 is the biggest number that goes into all three of those numbers evenly. So 4 is what I want as far as the numbers are concerned. Okay, letters. I'm going to draw this out for you for a while, and then maybe you'll notice something later. This one has 3 X's. This one here has 2 X's. And this one here has 1 X. What's the greatest number of X's they all have in common? They all have 1 X. They didn't all have 2 X's, and they didn't all have 3 X's. So 4X would be the GCF, the greatest common factor. So you start with your leading terms. You find the greatest number that will divide into them evenly, and then you look at your variables. If they all have an X, then they have something in common. You just have to figure out the greatest number of X's they all had in common. And they all had 1 X in common, but they didn't all have 2 X's, and they didn't all have 3 X's. But they all had 1 X. Okay, so right now I'm just teaching the very first step of factoring, and that's just locating the GCF. Okay, so going down to number 1. First I'm going to look for the biggest number that will divide into 5 and divide into 10 evenly. Okay, so 5 is the biggest number that goes into both of those evenly, so it's a 5. I'm going to go ahead and draw out my V's for right now. This one, bless you. The first one has 5 V's. The second one has 3 V's. What's the greatest number of V's? They both have. They both have 3 V's, right? So 5V cubed would be your GCF. Bless you. Okay, looking at number 2. First I look at the 3 and the 18, and I'm looking for the greatest number that would divide into 3 and also divide into 18 evenly. 3. Bless you. Are you okay?
Fine.
Okay, do they both have T's?
No.
Then that means they don't have T's in common, so it's just a 3. If they don't both have T's, then they must not have any in common, so there wouldn't be a greatest common number of T's. So sometimes your GCF is a number, sometimes it's just a letter, and sometimes it's a combination. then you'd have to look to see if they each had the one kind and if they each had the other kind. I'll show you here in a second if you're talking about 6. Okay, looking at number 3, I'm going to start with the leading terms. What's the greatest number that can divide into 4, divide into 2, and divide into 6 evenly?
2.
2. Okay, and then I've got 3 B's, 2 B's, and 1 B. 3 B's, 2 B's, and 1 B. What's the greatest number of B's they all have in common?
1.
They all have 1 B. So the GCF would be 2B. Okay, I want you to try number 5. Take a second and try number 5. Like what I was just showing you.
So we do it from the
Like I just wrote how that one had 3 B's, that one had 2, and that one had 1.
So we have to where they're going.
Well, you have to pick the it's the GCF, the greatest common factor. So you want the greatest number of B's that they all have in common, and they all have 1 B. But this guy, but they don't all have 2 B's because this one here doesn't have 2 B's, and they don't all have 3 B's.
12 doesn't have.
Right?
I did 2.
That's right. That's right.
Did you skip 3? I was like,
Oh, wait.
I'll call you in just a second. Oh, you didn't do 5?
Oh, I'm just. I need to.
Okay, so what do you think? 3. 3 is the biggest number that divides evenly into 9, 6, and 12. Do they all have X's?
no.
Then you can't pull any X's out. They all have to have the same letter in order to have it in common. So since they don't all have X's, then they don't all have an X in common, so you can't pull any out.
Are we going to do number 4?
We can?
Okay, well, I already did it.
Okay, take a second and try number 4.
Why is there a grape on the floor?
Jay always doing great.
That's easy.
Bless you. Bless you.
You wouldn't count the lies,
Yeah, we'll do so that's right. Okay, what'd you get? 2X. They all have 1X, and the greatest number that goes into 2, 10, and 6 is 2. Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay, let's look at number 6. So I start with the 4 and 10. What's the greatest number that will divide into 4 and also divide into 10?
2.
2. Then I look at the X's. This one has 2 X's, this one has 4. What's the greatest number of X's they both have in common?
2.
They both have 2 X's. Then you look at the Y's. This one has 1 Y, that one has 3. Because this one had 2 X's, and that one had 4. So the greatest number of X's they both have 2 X's, so that's why I square it. And then this one has 1 Y, and this one has 3. So what's the greatest number of Y's that they both have? They both have 1 Y, so your GCF would be 2X squared Y. Okay, so that's your very first part of factoring, is to always look for a GCF no matter what the problem looks like. So it's the number 1 rule of factoring, but like I said, it's the number 1 thing that I see students forget. Always. So, today you won't forget because it's the only thing you've been taught. All right, now we're going to actually factor the problems. So whenever you see the word factor, the first thing you always want to look for is the GCF, the greatest common factor. Right now that's all you know, but don't forget it as we learn more. So we're going to go farther than we did a minute ago. So I start with the GCF. What's the greatest thing that goes into 8 and 12? 2 does, but there's something greater. 4. And then what's the greatest number of X's they both have in common? They both have 1X. Okay, so if you want to completely factor, once you find your GCF, you slap parentheses down behind it, And you have to figure out what do you multiply the 4x with to get what you started with. So, first I'm going to ask myself, 4x times what would give me that 8x squared? 2x. 4x times 2x is 8x squared. And then 4x times what can give me that minus 12x? And negative 3. And you just want to double check just real quick to make sure it distributes right. 4x times 2x, 8x squared. Check. 4x times negative 3, negative 12x. Check. So we're working backwards than like how we did the first problem that we started with today. The first problem that we started with today looked like this. And we multiplied it and got that. Factoring is reverse. So whenever you factor, you'll always have an answer in parentheses. So if you ever have descriptions, words that tell you to factor, you should have an answer in parentheses when you're done. Maybe more than one thing in parentheses, but something should be in parentheses. Okay, number 2. Unless it doesn't factor, and I'll get into that later. Number 2. What's the greatest thing that divides into 5 and 10? 5. What's the greatest number of D's they both have in common? They both have 1 D. So once you find your GCF, you slap down parentheses back behind it. Michael, stop talking. 5D times what makes 5D cubed? D squared. And 5D times what makes 10D? A positive 2. Now, for today, we'll be done. But in a few days, we may be able to do more than this.
Is the rest of this going to be homework?
I'm not going to do all of these. I have something else for you for homework. Okay, number 3. What's the greatest thing that goes into 6, 12, and 24? 6. What's the greatest number of M's they all have? They all have 1 M. Okay, so once you find your GCF, slap your parentheses down behind it. Okay, what can you multiply 6M? Hang on, just let me ask the question. What can you multiply 6M with to get a 6M cubed?
M squared.
M squared. What can you multiply a 6M with? Wait till I ask the question. What can you multiply a 6M with to get a negative 12M squared? Negative 2M. And what can you multiply a 6M with to get a negative 24M? A negative 4. And for today, we'll stop with just that. Okay, number 6. This one sometimes confuses people. What's the greatest number that will go into 2 and 4? I didn't mean stop like that. I meant later, I'm going to show you how maybe you can factor what's in parentheses. But today, we're stopping right there. We won't check. I didn't mean stop for the day. Okay, what's the greatest thing that goes into 2 and 4? 2. Do they both have X's? No. Then they don't have X's in common. So 2's it for the GCF. Slap your parentheses back behind it. 2 times what makes 2? 1. And you have to put that 1. And 2 times what makes a negative 4x? A negative 2x. And that would be your answer. No. Let's see here. Why don't you try 12? I don't care. Nathan, do it anyway.
Holy cow.
Try number 12. Are you telling me to calm down? Because I'm not going to calm down, Nathan. Oh. I'm sorry. I texted my brother earlier. I had to see if he responded. No, he didn't. Of course he didn't. No, he did.
What did he say? I don't understand the last part.
No.
Where do you think you're going?
Michael, can you get up and get back in your chair, please?
Sounds like that redhead. Yes. Hat. Is that right? Stop. Stop right there.
You think you know? You think you're ready? And I can come around and I can help you here in a little bit. I just wanted to see how you could do. I hope all those grapes get picked up. Whoever. Because if they don't and they get stepped on, that's going to make a mess. Maybe here in like 3 minutes. Okay, you ready? I want to hear just the GCF. Kara, what's just the GCF? 6p cubed. Did everybody get 6p cubed for their GCF?
Yeah.
Okay, because if you mess up the GCF, of course the rest of it will be messed up. Okay, and then I'm just going to call on a few people. Kaylee, what can you multiply the 6p cubed with to get the 6p to the 6th? P to the 3rd. Okay. Megan, what can I multiply the 6p cubed with to get a 24p to the 5th?
Plus 4p.
Plus 4p squared. Good. And then, Anthony, what can I multiply 6p cubed with to get an 18p cubed? Just a 3. I don't need any more p's, so just a 3. Okay, I want to try number 15, and then I'm going to give you guys the rest of the time to work on your assignment so I can come around and help you. On number 9, what's the greatest thing that divides into 9 and 12? 3. Now look at x's. What's the greatest number of x's they both have?
2.
Okay, they both have 2. Now look at y's. What's the greatest number of y's they both have?
3.
They both have 3. Okay, so once you get your GCF, you slap your parentheses down in the back. Okay, what can I multiply this 3x squared y cubed with to get a 9x squared y to the 4th? 3y. 3 times 3 makes the 9. I've got 2 x's, I only wanted 2. I've got 3 y's, so I need 1 more to make 4. Okay, what can I multiply it with to get the negative 12x to the 4th? Negative 4x squared. Beautiful. So today is my birthday, and thank you. My brother is a man of few words. So anyway, so I have a twin brother. And so I sent him a text message earlier. I said, happy birthday, enjoy your special day. Ellie, my daughter, Ellie already gave me my 38 spankings this morning. It took a while. Have you got your spankings yet? We spank in our family on birthdays. I don't know, the rest of you.
I do that.
So anyway,
It's not spanking, it's
so
punching in the throat.
he hasn't got any spankings yet. He just said, nope, have a good day too. He's, not very descriptive in his speech, but anyway, so it's our birthday, and he has not got his spankings. He needs them. But he's 8 hours away, so I can't do it.
Kara goes, is he cute?
38 is cute.
Oh, he's so cute.
Yeah, because you look like
Robert Downey Jr. is 41.
No, we have nothing sugar like
similar features. I'm joking. Excuse me.
Why would I do what? Why not? I'm going to have you do... No. 8 through 23. 8 through 23.
Gosh, why are you doing this?
Did you just say 8 through 20?